"These documents are obviously fraudulent. I'm confiscating them." And then he tore them in half, not once, twice, 4 pieces, dropped onto the steel examination table of Terminal C's secondary inspection booth at Dulles International Airport, the way you drop something that has no value. The woman on the other side of the table did not flinch. She did not raise her voice. She looked at the 4 pieces of paper lying on the steel surface between them. The papers that had taken her 3 weeks to prepare, notarized twice, issued by an office that did not issue things lightly, and she placed her hands flat on the table and she looked at the customs officer with an expression that was absolutely, completely unreadable. His name was Officer Dale Whitmore, 11 years with the CBP. He had a jaw like a wall and a manner that had never once in 11 years suggested he was interested in being questioned. "You are going to want to call your supervisor," the woman said. "I don't need my supervisor to deal with a fraudulent passport and a fabricated diplomatic pouch manifest." "Neither of those things are fraudulent," she said. "Then you won't mind waiting while we process you for attempted misrepresentation of credentials to a federal officer." He picked up the radio on his belt. She let him. She had been waiting for this moment for about 4 minutes, ever since she saw which booth she had been directed to. She had known, with the calm certainty of a woman who had navigated a great many hostile rooms in her career, that this was going to go the way it was already going, and she had also known, with equal certainty, how it was going to end. In approximately 7 minutes, a phone in the secondary inspection supervisor's office would ring. The number on the caller ID would not be a number anyone at Dulles International Airport had ever expected to see on a Sunday afternoon. Have you ever watched someone in a position of authority decide what you are before you've had a chance to speak? Before they've even looked at you properly? Hold that thought, because what happened at Booth 7 of Terminal C is going to stay with you. Let me take you back. 3 days earlier, Ambassador Celeste Monroe had been in the diplomatic service for 29 years. She had started as a junior officer in the State Department at 24, stationed in Nairobi, where she had learned, very quickly, that the gap between what a country presents to the world and what it is on the inside is always larger than the briefings suggest. She had cultivated a habit of looking past presentations, of attending to the thing behind the thing, the pressure under the official calm. She had carried that habit through postings in Nairobi, Jakarta, Brussels, Sao Paulo, and Accra. She had been promoted 8 times. She had negotiated 2 bilateral trade agreements that her supervisors had described as not survivable. She had been present in 3 rooms where the wrong word could have ended careers and possibly more, and she had found the right word each time, in the particular way of people who have spent their lives believing that language, wielded with precision, is the most powerful instrument in any room. Before all of that, before the postings and the promotions and the bilaterals, there had been a woman in Baltimore named Gloria Monroe who had cleaned offices on the night shift and taken the number 3 bus home at 2 in the morning for 22 years. Gloria Monroe had raised Celeste and her 2 brothers in a 3-bedroom row house on a street where the corner store had iron grates on its windows. She had not gone to college. She had wanted to, and the wanting had never gone away, and she had poured it, all of it, every ounce, into her daughter. Celeste had carried her mother through every room she had ever entered. Literally, there was a photograph of Gloria Monroe in the inside pocket of every jacket Celeste owned, tucked behind her credentials, traveling with her everywhere the way a talisman travels. A small photograph, wallet-sized, taken in 1987 in front of the row house on a summer afternoon. Gloria in a yellow dress, laughing at something off camera. Celeste had had it laminated years ago because the edges had started to soften. She thought about her mother often, in hotel rooms in foreign capitals, in conference rooms where the stakes were impossible, in airport corridors at the end of long journeys. She thought about the number 3 bus at 2 in the morning. She thought about what it had cost Gloria Monroe to send her daughter into rooms that Gloria Monroe herself had never been allowed to enter. She did not waste the cost. The diplomatic passport was one of the many things her mother had never held. Gloria Monroe had died in 2009. Before the first ambassadorship, before the bilaterals, before any of it was what it had become. Celeste carried the laminated photograph and she carried the memory and she carried the knowledge of what had been given so that she could stand in the rooms she stood in. She had been carrying all of that through Booth 7 of Terminal C. She had been carrying it when Dale Whitmore tore the papers. She had been appointed United States Ambassador to the Republic of Ghana 14 months ago. She was returning from Accra on a diplomatic flight, carrying a sealed pouch that contained materials related to an active negotiation her office was conducting. Nothing she could discuss publicly, nothing she was going to allow to be opened by a CBP officer at Dulles regardless of how many walls that officer's jaw resembled. The diplomatic pouch was not the problem. The diplomatic pouch had its own procedures, its own protocols, its own legal protections that predated Officer Dale Whitmore by about 200 years. The problem was the passport. Celeste Monroe carried two passports, a standard American passport and a diplomatic passport issued by the State Department. Both were valid, both were current, both were exactly what they appeared to be. She had presented the diplomatic passport at the primary inspection booth, been waved through without incident, and had been directed to secondary inspection for what was described as a routine additional screening of diplomatic materials. That was where Officer Dale Whitmore had been waiting. He had looked at the diplomatic passport the way a person looks at a menu item they've already decided they don't want. He had turned it over, he had looked at the pouch. He had looked at the manifest she carried, the official document listing the contents of the pouch at a classification level visible to CBP officers, and he had said, with a certainty that had not been earned, that the manifest appeared to have been altered. "The hologram is wrong," he had said. It was not wrong. It was a current issue State Department hologram printed on security paper from a print run conducted 6 weeks ago. Ambassador Monroe had prepared this manifest herself in Accra on a Thursday morning, using the equipment and forms her office was required by law to use. She knew exactly what a correct hologram looked like because she had been looking at them for 29 years. She had told him this. He had told her she would not instruct him on his own job. She had said, "I am a United States ambassador. I am instructing you to examine the document properly." He had said, "And I'm telling you these papers are fraudulent," and then he had torn them. Here is what Ambassador Monroe did not do. She did not shout. She did not demand. She did not perform the particular kind of outrage that would have given Officer Whitmore the confirmation he was looking for, the evidence that she was unstable, irrational, a problem that needed to be managed, rather than a diplomat who needed to be believed. She placed her hands flat on the table. She asked him to call his supervisor, and while he radioed for backup with the self-satisfaction of a man who had never once been wrong, she reached into the interior pocket of her coat and withdrew her personal phone. She scrolled to a contact saved under a first name only, a contact she had used 6 times in 29 years, which was, in diplomatic terms, quite frequently. She typed a text message of 11 words. She hit send. In the supervisor's office 40 feet away at 4:57 on a Sunday afternoon, a phone rang. The supervisor, a 20-year CBP veteran named Thomas Carr, answered it on the second ring. The voice on the other end identified itself. Carr's hand tightened on the phone. He said, "Yes, ma'am." He said it twice. He put the phone down with the careful precision of someone handling something fragile. He walked to booth 7 at a pace that looked like walking but was nearly running. Officer Whitmore was in mid-sentence when Supervisor Carr appeared at the door. He stopped. He looked at Carr's face. Carr's face was not the face of a man who had come to support him. "Officer Whitmore," Carr said, "step away from the table." "Sir, I have reason to believe these credentials are—" "Step away from the table." Whitmore stepped back. Carr looked at the 4 pieces of paper on the steel surface. He picked them up carefully and arranged them into their original configuration. He read them. He looked at the passport. He looked at the diplomatic pouch manifest. He looked at each document with the thoroughness of a man who was doing arithmetic and arriving at a number he very much did not want to arrive at. He looked at Ambassador Monroe. "Ambassador," he said, "I owe you an immediate and unconditional apology on behalf of this facility." "You do," she said. "Is there anything we can do for you right now?" "You can process me through, restore the integrity of my manifest documentation, and ensure the sealed pouch is logged and transferred with full chain of custody intact." She paused. "And you can make sure Officer Whitmore doesn't do this to the next person." The Secretary of State had called. That was the text. 11 words. "Please call the CBP supervisor at Dulles Terminal C Secondary. Regards, C." The response had taken 4 minutes. Dale Whitmore was escorted from the secondary inspection area and placed on administrative suspension within the hour. The Office of Professional Responsibility opened a review by the following morning. 3 prior complaints against Whitmore, all involving passengers of color, all marked closed without action, were reopened as part of the investigation. The story reached the press through a source at Dulles that none of the parties involved had authorized. By Monday evening, every major outlet had it. The headline wrote itself. The video existed. A traveler in an adjacent booth had captured the moment the documents were torn, the calm response, the supervisor's arrival. It circulated with the speed of things that confirm what a lot of people already know to be true. The State Department issued a formal statement expressing full confidence in Ambassador Monroe and describing Whitmore's conduct as a serious breach of protocol that would be addressed fully through appropriate channels. The Secretary of State, asked at a press briefing whether she had personally called Dulles, confirmed that she had. Asked why, she said, "Because when one of our ambassadors is treated that way in her own country's airport, the appropriate response is to call." Dale Whitmore's employment with the CBP was terminated after a 60-day investigation. The investigation also resulted in a mandatory review of secondary screening procedures at Dulles and 3 other major airports, a retraining requirement for officers whose complaint histories showed patterns of disparate treatment, and a formal audit of closed complaints from the preceding 5 years. 14 complaints were reopened. 6 resulted in formal findings. 3 resulted in additional terminations. The CBP's Office of Diversity and Civil Rights was directed to conduct a systemic review of complaint handling at all major entry points. The review took 8 months. Its findings were not comfortable reading. The percentage of closed without action complaints that involved passengers of color was measurably and significantly higher than those involving other passengers. The finding was documented. Corrective actions were mandated. An independent oversight body was assigned to monitor compliance for 3 years. None of this would have happened without a phone call, and the phone call would not have happened without the text, and the text would not have happened without the years of relationship building, the 29 years of diplomatic work, the quiet accumulation of trust and credibility in rooms where trust and credibility are the only currency that matters. This is what power looks like when it is built by someone who knows what it is for, not display, not performance. 11 words sent calmly, while a man with a radio was arranging her suspension. The confidence to send that text came from 29 years. It came from Gloria Monroe on the number 3 bus. It came from a laminated photograph in an inside jacket pocket. Celeste Monroe did not discuss the photograph publicly. She did not make it part of any statement or any interview. But in Accra, on the morning the bilateral agreement was signed, she stood in the sun outside the building where the ceremony had taken place, and she reached into her inside jacket pocket and she looked at the small laminated picture for a long moment. She put it back. She went back inside. The work continued. It always does. Ambassador Monroe returned to Accra and completed her work on the bilateral negotiation. The agreement was signed 4 months later on a morning in Accra in a room full of people who had worked very hard to get there. She did not mention Dulles in any of her remarks. She did not need to. What had happened at Booth 7 had already become part of the record. She did one interview in a magazine 8 months later. She spoke about 29 years in the diplomatic service. She spoke about the habit she had cultivated of looking past presentations, of attending to the thing behind the thing. She spoke about the gap between what institutions present to the world and what they actually are on the inside. She was asked about the torn papers. She said that documents can be torn. She said that their content cannot. She said that the manifest had been reconstructed from her own records before she left Dulles that evening, properly logged, properly transferred, chain of custody intact. She said that the negotiation she had been carrying it for had concluded successfully. She said, "They can tear the paper. They cannot tear what it represents." The leather pouch had been on her shoulder the entire time, sealed, intact, untouched. The work she had been carrying for her country had traveled through that booth without interruption. Some things are carried no matter what. Some things make it through. If this story moved you, please share it, leave a like, subscribe, and ring the bell. Tell me in the comments, have you ever had something of yours dismissed or destroyed by someone who had not taken a moment to understand its value? Here is what really gets me. It is the moment she placed her hands flat on the table, not raised in protest, not balled into fists, flat. Still, the gesture of a woman who had been in enough rooms to know that stillness in that moment was the most powerful thing she had. 29 years of diplomatic service. She had been in rooms where the wrong word could have ended more than careers. And when a man tore her papers in half, she placed her hands flat on a steel table in an airport booth and waited for the world to catch up to what she already knew. She had already sent the text. She knew what was coming. She was simply standing in the time between the action and its consequence, that strange suspended moment where the powerful person doesn't yet know what they've done. She waded through it with her hands flat and her eyes steady and her voice perfectly, absolutely level. That is not something you are born with. That is something built. Year by year, room by room, decision by decision, the compound interest of choosing over and over not to be unmade by people who have decided, before they have looked at you properly, what you are. Here is what really gets me. It is the moment she placed her hands flat on the table, not raised in protest, not balled into fists. Flat. Still. The gesture of a woman who had been in enough rooms to know that stillness in that moment was the most powerful thing she had. 29 years of diplomatic service. She had been in rooms where the wrong word could have ended more than careers. And when a man tore her papers in half, she placed her hands flat on a steel table in an airport booth and waited for the world to catch up to what she already knew. She had already sent the text. She knew what was coming. She was simply standing in the time between the action and its consequence. That strange suspended moment where the powerful person doesn't yet know what they've done. She waded through it with her hands flat and her eyes steady and her voice perfectly, absolutely level. That is not something you are born with. That is something built. Year by year, room by room, decision by decision. The compound interest of choosing over and over, not to be unmade by people who have decided before they have looked at you properly what you are. And here is the other thing, the thing underneath everything else. Gloria Monroe never traveled outside the United States. She never had a passport, standard or diplomatic. She took the number 3 bus to clean offices at night and came home at 2 in the morning and got up again in the morning and did it again. For 22 years. She did not travel to Nairobi or Jakarta or Brussels or Sao Paulo or Accra. She did not negotiate bilaterals or carry sealed pouches or receive calls from secretaries of state. But she traveled. She traveled through her daughter. She traveled in the inside pocket of every jacket Celeste Monroe ever wore, in a small laminated photograph taken on a summer afternoon in front of a row house in Baltimore. She traveled to every room her daughter entered. She was in every negotiation, every credential presentation, every moment of stillness at a steel table in Terminal C. They tore the manifest. They could not tear Gloria Monroe from the inside of that jacket. Some things travel no matter what. Some people make it through in ways they never could have predicted, in the rooms of children and grandchildren who carry them forward, who press their photographs against their chests at the end of impossible days, who do not forget what was given so that they could stand where they stand. I want to ask you something personal. Whose photograph do you carry? Not literally, but who travels with you into the difficult rooms? Who is in the inside pocket of everything you do? And do they know? Leave that in the comments. I mean it. Because that answer, whatever it is, that is the real story. That has always been the real story. Not the booth, not the torn paper, not even the phone call, as satisfying as the phone call is. The real story is Gloria Monroe on the number 3 bus at 2 in the morning, already believing in a future she would never see but was building anyway. The real story is a daughter who did not waste that. The real story is a laminated photograph in an inside jacket pocket traveling to every room in the world, untorn and untearable and absolutely, permanently present. Carry it. Whatever yours is, carry it into every room. Let it make you still when the room demands that you become small. That stillness, that flat-handed, level-voiced, unshakable stillness, is not passivity. It is the weight of everything you have been given, holding you in place. It is the heaviest and most powerful thing you own, and no one, no matter how certain they are, no matter how many walls their jaw resembles, can tear it from you.